Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 121 based on novel. So let's start. Overlord body. Village chief laughed and cried at the same time. Overlord body. Hee, it's my sin. Mua, let us go home, okay? I beg of you. Qin Mu's vital chi surged out, and lifted the elder into his arms. His smile was radiant like the morning sun in early spring. It seemed to be able to drive away all the dark clouds in others' hearts, bringing them warmth and hope. Overlord body will never admit defeat, never accept death. Qin Mu had an indescribable infectiousness to his voice when he straightened his back and spoke with new confidence and certainty. I will surpass all of you and stop always being the number 2 in the world. I will surpass you in sword skills and become the sword god, reaching the extremes in sword path. I shall surpass Grandpa Apothecary in the art of healing, Grandpa Cripple in speed, Grandpa Mute in forging treasure, Grandpa Deaf in the path of painting, Grandpa Ma in fist skills, Grandpa Butcher in knife skills, Grandpa Blind in divine eyes, and Granny Sai in divine arts. I will be the number 1 in the world. Hermit Qin Mu laughed loudly. Human emperor's ambitions are laudable, but can you surpass these stone statues? Can you surpass those in great ruins? Even if you can you surpass founding emperor? His voice gradually became sterner, as if he was lecturing a small boy. You are only a naive child that has ambitions, but has never been faced setbacks or trials, so go back and play with water. Isn't it good to be an ordinary human and live an ordinary life? You can't yet understand the world of adults. Qin Mu raised his head to look at the stone statues and said calmly, if I don't work hard and strive for success, I will naturally not surpass the first human emperor. But if I push myself one step at a time, there will be a chance, there will be hope. If I don't work hard and strive for success, but only think about failure all the time, of course I won't have shit. He took a glance at Hermit Qin Mu. Immortal Qin Mu, since you are an immortal, will you die? Hermit Qin Mu shook his head. There's no immortal that won't die. What can you leave behind? Asked Qin Mu. Hermit Qin Mu said, I didn't bring anything when I came to life, so I can't bring anything when I leave either. Qin Mu revealed a smile. But the immortals of Little Jade capital left behind stone statues, and so did the first human emperor and Saint Woodcutter. But are they truly dead? During nighttime in great ruins, I saw a stone statue of a heavenly king ride the dragon Qilin to slay divine dragons. I saw stone statues reviving to go into battle once again. I have even seen them give off divine light at night to protect the people of great ruins. But what will you leave behind after you die? He didn't wait for Hermit Qin Mu to reply and answered for him. Nothing. Hermit Qin Mu was angered, and he shook his head while smiling. You are still a little child who only knows how to brag, not understanding the gains and losses. You will get bruised all over and break your head, your body, and yourself until you are like me and the old human emperor. When that time comes, your family will be eradicated, leaving you all alone, without even a child to send you off. At that time, you will come to the realization that my words were gems of wisdom. Qin Mu raised his head to look at the stone statue, and said with a calm expression, they will revive, and when there's hope in this world once again, they will come back to life and continue to fight for hope. But when that time comes, will immortal Qin Mu be able to come back to life to fight? He won't, because you are already dead. Furious, Hermit Qin Mu took a step forward. His clothes moved by themselves, without the wind, and his hair fluttered as he shouted, even if you are the human emperor, what can you do? Qin Mu took a glance at him. I'm the overlord body. There is no overlord body in this world. Hermit Qin Mu shouted out at an ear-deafening volume. What the F***ck, is an overlord body. There's absolutely no such constitution. Who are you trying to fool? This world has an overlord body. Village chief suddenly opened his mouth, and Hermit Qin Mu was slightly stunned when he shifted his gaze at him. Village chief struggled free from Qin Mu's vital qi and floated up with a solemn face. There's an overlord body in this world, an overlord body from Carefree village. Hermit Qin Mu's heart was greatly shaken, and he looked at Qin Mu in a hurry while crying out, "What you mean is?" His surname is Qin, Qin of founding emperor. Village chief seemed to have lost his depression from earlier, but his tone still had a hint of exhaustion. Qin of Carefree village, the Qin that had swept all 8 lands and united the world. He is the overlord body, the matchless overlord body. Carefree village. Hermit Qin Mu's heart was a little flustered, and it took him a moment to compose himself. He asked, "Qin of Carefree village? Qin of founding emperor? That golden book is from Carefree village. Carefree village still has someone from Qin family." Village chief nodded. "We can't do it, but the Qin family can." Hermit Qin Mu revealed an excited expression, but soon hid it away once more. He chuckled. Old Dao brother seems to not have much understanding of founding emperor era. What can the Qin family do? Aren't they just a bunch of failures like us? Carefree village is merely some people trying their best to stay alive. What's the difference between them and our little Jade capital? Actually, you don't even believe it yourself. Village chief was silent for the moment, then suddenly opened his mouth. There's hope, even if it's a slither. Hermit Qin Mu's expression was apathetic as he said, "Don't take Carefree village to pressure me. There is no overlord body in Carefree village. There's no overlord body in this world. Mua can prove it to you," village chief said solemnly. "He can prove he is the one and only overlord body." Hermit Qin Mu laughed loudly and shook his head. "Dao brother, are you only left with the ability to say lies? Overlord body, overlord body." His voice suddenly became incomparably resounding and spread through Little Jade Capital. "Disciples of Little Jade Capital, come over here." Qin Mu was slightly stunned. Hermit Qin Mu's face became solemn, and he ruthlessly stared over, his sleeves trembling. "Prove it to me. My Little Jade Capital has only groomed 3 disciples, but defeat them, and I'll go down the mountain with you." Qin Mu flexed his muscles, revealing a smile while raising his eyebrows. "Immortal Qin Mu, you are the one who said it. 3 is too little. Why don't all of you immortals of Little Jade Capital seal your cultivations and come at once? Dao Master and Rulai can come as well." His aura suddenly burst forth, and he roared ruthlessly, "I'll beat you all to death." "Human Emperor is fierce, eh?" Hermit Qin Mu sneered. "You are like a hurt kitten brandishing his claws, putting on a bravado in an attempt to scare me. Yet you are actually hiding the fear in your heart. However, since you asked, the immortals of my Little Jade Capital will wait at Hall of 3 Eons and Hall of 5 Qi for Human Emperor's teaching." He then added indifferently, "However, if you want to challenge us, you will still need to defeat the 3 disciples of my Little Jade Capital to qualify to enter Hall of 3 Eons and Hall of 5 Qi. If you can't defeat them, go down the mountain." Village chief's eyes lit up. "Qin Mu, much thanks. What are you thanking me for?" "I'm just teaching you two to give up on your recklessness." "That's right, before you guys, Shu Xinghua from high heavens had come here. He used 10 days to pass through Hall of 3 Eons and Hall of 5 Qi. If you can't even match up to him, quickly go down the mountain. Don't disgrace the previous human emperors and the saints of Heavenly Saint cult." Hermit Qin Mu said coldly. Qin Mu's spirit was roused and he laughed. "Shu Xinghu is merely a pseudo-overlord body, while I'm the true overlord body. If he can pass, why can't I?" Hermit Qin Mu was stunned and shook his head. "I don't know where your sick confidence comes from. Qin Mu's smile faded away, and he looked at the three figures closing in rapidly. He was suddenly reminded of something and asked in a low voice, "Village chief, was I very fierce just now?" Village chief nodded, seemingly having walked out of the shadow of his beliefs being destroyed. He said, "Super fierce. Was I scary?" "Especially scary." Qin Mu executed Overlord Body 3 Elixir Body and smiled. "I can be even scarier." The vital chi in his body circulated, and a whooshing of gale could be heard. Village chief and hermit Qin Mu raised their eyebrows in astonishment. Among the howling of the gale, there were also the sounds of huge waves crashing against a cliff. The rumblings came from Qin Mu's vital chi's rapid flow and crash against the cliff when turning around. After them came the rumbling of thunder. It sounded like lightning was flashing in the depths of dark clouds. The thunder rolled rapidly from one point to another, created by Qin Mu's vital chi as it flowed through the sky in his divine treasures. The three disciples of Little Jade capital were still rushing over, and were some 3 celestial islands away. Immortal Qin Mu. Qin Mu's aura peaked, with an uncomfortable pent-up feeling. He looked at Immortal Qin Mu with excitement and smiled. "Why don't we fight first before they arrive?" Hermit Qin Mu shook his head. "If you don't defeat them, you don't have the right to challenge me." Crack! Qin Mu took a step, and his body instantly pressured his surroundings to explode with the sound of thunder. The air in front of the old immortal was compressed like a wall which then exploded from the pressure. The corners of Hermit Qin Mu's eyes twitched, and he finally allowed anger to enter his face. He raised his palm, and green rays filled the entire sky. Village chief immediately said, "Qin Mu, 6 directions." "I know." Hermit Qin Mu shouted out, and loud sounds of the gates closing came from his body as he closed his divine bridge, life and death, celestial being, and 7 stars divine treasures. His vital chi then burst forth, and he smiled in anger. "Little human emperor, I have long been annoyed with you. You're merely a brat that knows how to play with water and play with them." The palm and fist of the two people collided, and Hermit Qin Mu grunted before being sent backward. He crashed into a stone statue with a rumble. That stone statue was incomparably dense, and, similar to the stone statues in great ruins, was unbreakable. Because of that, it didn't even move when he crashed into it. This cultivation, the air in Hermit Qin Mu's chest was almost all pushed out. With a flushed face, he shouted out, "Old Dao brother, are you sure he's only on 6 directions realm?" Qin Mu rushed forth like a barbaric dragon, and when he moved, his body was heavy yet his speed was unbelievably fast. By combining a body that was as heavy as a mountain with speed, Qin Mu created something that should have been impossible to do at his age, yet he did it anyway. Hermit Qin Mu didn't have time to think about it. When he moved his hands, his green chi suddenly changed color, becoming black and white. Like 2 huge fish, they suddenly transformed into twin dragons to strike Qin Mu. It's 6-direction realm. Village chief also couldn't hide his astonishment. He first took the time to compose himself, then said, "But his cultivation is much stronger than before." Qin Mu's cultivation of spirit embryo realm had reached a height that village chief had never expected to see on that realm. After all, when Qin Mu reached 5 elements realm and then 6 directions realm, the gap between him and those on the same realm hadn't widened, but stayed the same. However, from the looks of it, after Qin Mu had traveled through Ghost Valley and returned from Yudu, his cultivation had quite a steep increase. This kind of incomparably dense magic power astonished and shocked even village chief. Upon hearing 2 loud bangs, Qin Mu clasped his hands and crushed the 2 huge dragons with brute force, his speed not decreasing in the least. Hermit Qin Mu rose into the air and gathered chi into sword. When he pointed down with a finger, tens of thousands of sword chi shot towards Qin Mu like meteors. A dot of moving starlight, 10,000 swords breaking through the sky. Qin Mu leaped into the sky, and his sword lights burst forth. His vital qi was like a dragon whose body trembled, and 10,000 dragons burst forth. 9 Dragons Monarch Technique. The dragons and swords collided. Hermit Qin Mu grunted once more, and his feet tapped rapidly in the sky to disperse the overwhelming power from Qin Mu's divine art. The dragons and swords crumbled and transformed into a meteor shower. Within it, a fist became larger and larger. Hermit Qin Mu moved irregularly, trying to avoid it. Village chief couldn't help shaking his head. How can you win by competing your footwork and body movements with those of cripple? Hermit Qin Mu couldn't avoid the strike, and had to face it head-on. With a loud rumble, he flew backward. A cloud of dust rose from a celestial island. After a moment, the sound of Hermit Qin Mu crashing into the celestial mountain could be heard. When competing with fist skill against Old Ma, you can only lose, Qin Mu. Village chief shook his head once again. Qin Mu was sprinting frantically in mid-air, when the 3 disciples of Little Jade capital came to the top of the celestial mountain. At that moment, they saw Qin Mu transforming into a trail of light, as he crashed into the place where Hermit Qin Mu had landed. They couldn't help being dumbstruck by this sight, as they didn't know what had happened. Village chief took a glance at the 3 of them and smiled. Immortal Qin Mu has already gone over, so let us go there too. When he finished saying this, he floated up and headed toward that celestial mountain. The 3 people looked at one another and immediately followed after him. On the other celestial mountains and celestial islands, old immortals walked out from their seclusion and looked at the mountain where the fight was happening with astonishment. What commotion is this? Old Rulai and Old Dao Master were also alarmed and looked over in that direction. Old Rulai's discerning eyes were matchless, and he said in astonishment, "It looks like human Emperor Qin is beating Hermit Qin Mu who doesn't dare to fight back." Old Dao Master smiled. "It's more like he can't fight back. He lost the key moment and is now suppressed by the magic power of human Emperor." On the celestial island, the mountains extended forever into the distance. 2 people, one young and one old, fought their way from the bottom of the mountain to the top. Qin Mu's magic power was violent, transforming into a huge mudra to press down on his opponent. Hermit Qin Mu rolled and tumbled to dodge the attack, as countless trees were flattened by Qin Mu's palm. A huge handprint that had an area of 6 as instantly appeared on the ground. Qin Mu unleashed all his big moves, beating Hermit Qin Mu all the way from the bottom of the mountain to the top. Up there was a hall that was built with green bricks and red tiles, as well as copper pillars that were as thick as a water cauldron. Hermit Qin Mu was smashed into the hall's wall. Coming over with heavy footsteps, Qin Mu kicked a copper pillar. Village chief shook his head and said in a heavy voice, "Mua, this is the Jade capital of founding emperor era, a palace that was constructed by gods. How can you demolish it so easily?" Before he could finish saying that, the copper pillar was broken by Qin Mu's kick, stunning village chief. A youth beside him explained softly, "Senior, this hall was built by senior uncle Qin Mu afterward. It isn't as sturdy as the original hall." Qin Mu dug his fingers into the copper pillar that was as thick as a water cauldron and lifted it up. Using it as a spear, he stabbed the hall's wall. A loud rumble came from inside. Even though the copper pillar was thick, Qin Mu could utilize it as nimbly as he could a spear. It pierced the air with a whoosh. After just a few moves, the hall's wall was covered in thousands of holes while bricks flew in all directions. Hermit Qin Mu was battered and left exhausted. His hands finally caught the bronze pillar, only to feel it become incomparably scorching, as it was being smelted by Qin Mu's magic power, causing liquid bronze to flow down. Liquid copper flowed down from the pillar and transformed into copper swords in the air. 10,000 of them flew in unison, straight at Hermit Qin Mu. The old immortal flew back, and crashed into a celestial mountain on another celestial island. Qin Mu exerted force as he roared, throwing the melting bronze pillar after his opponent. It smashed into Hermit Qin Mu's chest, securing him on the celestial mountain. At the same time, Qin Mu's figure flashed forward like a shooting star. Raising his knee, he crashed into the bronze pillar. The whole celestial mountain shook, and all the trees rustled. Village chief and the 3 disciples of Little Jade capital immediately flew over. Just as they reached that celestial island, they saw Qin Mu pulling the copper pillar out from the cliff before grabbing Hermit Qin Mu out from a cave by the collar. He tossed this elder ruthlessly at the ground, which resulted in a loud bang as a deep pit was created. "I've been long annoyed by your nagging. This is so satisfying. You even made village chief cry. I'll beat you to death." Qin Mu turned his head to look at the 4 people flying over, and grinned at the 3 disciples of Little Jade capital. "Don't be scared. I haven't fought for quite a few days, so I'm just doing some stretches, and not looking for revenge or murder. Now that I've finished stretching, I feel much better." The 3 were too frightened to say anything. They just looked at Hermit Qin Mu sprawled at the bottom of the pit. "Senior uncle," a girl said shyly. "I'm okay." Hermit Qin Mu lay unmoving, but his voice was still full of vigor. "Don't need to care about me, just let me lie here for a while." The trio relaxed, and one of them, a slightly older man, said, "Senior Uncle Qin Mu is fine." Qin Mu looked toward the 3 people, one of whom was an old acquaintance. It was Wang Muren, who he had met once before. Wang Muren was the disciple of Wanderer Jin, who was one of the immortals of Little Jade capital. He Wanderer had been invited down the mountain by 8th Imperial Uncle Ling Yinfeng to stop Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, but got killed by him instead. Back then, Wang Muren was a mischievous youth, and when Qin Mu had first met him, Wanderer Jin was fishing under a waterfall while he was throwing stones a bit farther away. Yu Qinghong even said that he should be Wanderer Jin's own child, or else he would have beaten him to death. The Wang Muren back had been mischievous, but after the last 2 years, he had become much steadier. Qin Mu looked at the other 2 people. Both the woman and man had graceful bearings, but he remembered Wang Muren having said that there weren't many people of his age in Little Jade capital. Based on that, these 2 should have grown up with Wang Muren, even if they were slightly older. The girl was around 17 or 18, and she was already lovely, gentle, refined, and elegant. She was dressed in cyan clothes, her collar and sleeves embroidered with a darker blue. Her sashes were green and white, and on her forehead, there was a thin chain strung together by jade beads. One side hung on her forehead, while the other side was tethered to her hair bun. She had to like Jade a lot since even her head accessories were decorated with it. It had to say whether if it was the wind in the mountain, or her vital qi that caused her sashes to flutter behind her. They were very long and slithered in the air like green and white spirit snakes. "She's a little skinny, and she's not as pretty as Yuxiu. Yuxiu's chest is a lot plumper than hers." Qin Mu pulled his gaze away and looked at the man. He seemed a bit more mature than the Jade girl. He didn't pay as much attention to his clothes and appearance, wearing a long gown with long sleeves and a jade pendant around his waist. However, he also had a distinct style of being sage-like. His gaze was very deep. Sometimes it was like starlight, while at other times it would transform into a blazing sun full of bursting flames. Little Jade capital is the head of the sacred grounds in the world. The techniques they cultivate seem to be different from one another, and each one of them isn't any inferior to that of Great Thunderclap Monastery, or Dao Sect, Qin Mu thought to himself. Senior brother Qin. When Wang Muren saw him, his jet-black eyes burst forth with a hint of vigor which dimmed straight afterward. It was obvious that Qin Mu had reminded him of his own master, Wanderer Jin. When he had come to Eternal Peace Empire with Wanderer Jin back then to intercept Imperial Preceptor from quelling the rebellion in the south, he had met Qin Mu. Since their ages, as well as those of Chen Wanyun, Yu Qinghong, and the rest, were close, his impression of them had been deeply etched into his mind even though they had only interacted for a short while. After Wanderer Jin was killed by Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, Wang Muren brought the corpse back to Little Jade capital, and they had never met again after that. Brother Muren. Qin Mu greeted him and asked, "The senior brother and sister are?" "This is my senior sister Mu Qingdai, and this is my senior brother Long Yu," Wang Muren introduced. Senior sister Mu is the disciple of Wanderer Ding Shi, and Long Yu is the disciple of Hermit Qian Yun. Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly. There were many inheritances in Little Jade capital, and they could probably even take out over a dozen techniques like Rulai's Mahayana Sutra of Great Thunderclap Monastery, or Pre-Celestial Supreme Mystery Technique of Dao Sect. The so-called immortals of Little Jade capital were all proficient in one or several techniques. But could there be any ultimate arts in Little Jade capital that could be above these techniques? If there wasn't, no matter how many top-notch techniques they had, there was still a limit to one's energy. It was impossible for anyone to cultivate every single technique to its extreme. After all, not everyone was an overlord body like him. Suddenly, Hermit Qingyu spoke again. Xu Xinghua's abilities are extraordinary, and Mu Qingdai was defeated by him in 27 moves. Long Yu lost to him in 24 moves, while Wang Muren was defeated in 23 moves. However, you mustn't think that Wang Muren's is the weakest. As a matter of fact, Wang Muren's abilities are the strongest among the three of them. However, when fighting with Xu Xinghua, the stronger ones will fall even faster. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. He lowered his head to see that Hermit Qingyu was no longer in the pit. At this moment, Hermit Qingyu was standing beside village chief as if nothing had happened. There were no injuries on his body and his clothes were not dirted or wrinkled. It looked as if he hadn't been the one who got beaten up by Qin Mu earlier. "Old Immortal Shaw is extraordinary, your speed is too fast," praised Qin Mu. "I didn't even see when you got up and tidied up your clothes." Hermit Qingyu's face turned slightly green, but Qin Mu did not pay attention to it. Why did Immortal Qingyu say that when fighting with Xu Xinghua, the stronger ones fall faster? Hermit Qingyu looked at Wang Muren and said, "Muren, you shall explain." Wang Muren acknowledged and said, "Xu Xinghua's technique is weird. It becomes stronger when facing a strong technique, and his divine arts were also very weird. They should belong to an adaptable type. Many of his divine arts seem to have been adapted on the spot, being created at the last moment. The stronger the opponent's abilities are, the stronger his abilities become. The more intricate his opponent's divine arts are, the more intricate his divine arts become." Qin Mu's expression became grim. He has already jumped out of technique and reached the realm of skill. I can't see through it. It looked like it might be related to his technique, yet it also looked like he had already entered this kind of realm, Wang Muren said. Qin Mu went into a daze. If there was this kind of technique, it would be something interesting. Techniques that developed creativity were rarely seen, but when his Overlord Body 3 elixir technique wasn't complete in the past, he had been required to develop his creativity. Woodcutter's teachings were also a method for developing creativity. However, the true Overlord Body 3 elixir technique was preserved in the Qin family of Carefree village. When Qin Mu received the complete technique from his father Qin Hanjin, there was no longer any need for creativity. If Xu Xinghua's technique could really develop creativity, it would be on another level. With such a person, how many moves would it take to determine victory or defeat? One move? Or would it take hundreds of moves? He's indeed a terrifying opponent, no doubt a pseudo-overlord body, muttered Qin Mu. Hermit Qingyu's expression froze, and he looked towards village chief. He asked in a low voice, "Dao brother, never mind overlord body, where did this pseudo-overlord body come from? Village chief's expression darkened a bit, and he snorted. Your knowledge is shallow, it's best if you don't ask. Hermit Qin Mu snorted and looked at Wang Muren and the rest. Human Emperor Qin is the heavenly saint cult master, and also the human emperor, holding two great inheritances simultaneously. Furthermore, his technique and divine arts are both extremely weird. His magic power is beyond dense, so don't contest him in magic power alone. Otherwise, you will be suppressed by him. When he said this, he couldn't help feeling slightly ashamed. He had tried to fight Qin Mu with magic power earlier, which ended up in him being overwhelmed by the youth. He didn't have the time to execute any intricate moves. Wang Muren, Mu Qingdao, and Long Yu immediately memorized his advice to the last word. His attacks have many variations, his body movements and footwork are bizarre, his speed is also extremely fast. So don't get caught by him, or else it'll be hard to break free. Hermit Qin Mu continued to give pointers to the three. He said, his fist skills are Great Thunderclap Monastery's Thunderclap 8 strikes. It's a fist divine art on Sakura realm, and has an extremely high power. If you fight with fist skills against him, you will be suppressed by his magic power and strength, so you need to be careful. He has also cultivated Ling family's 9 dragons monarch technique, so his divine arts aren't weak as well. Furthermore, he has also incorporated the skill of forging treasures into his fighting method, thus the three of you must be careful. That was what made his heart ache the most. Qin Mu had plucked the bronze pillar up, and used it as a spear to attack, with an overbearing offense. Then, he even used his vital qi to melt the bronze pillar, shaping the bronze into swords. That attack had completely defeated him. And what Qin Mu had used was nothing else, but the method to forge treasures. Hermit Qin Mu had never met anyone who would forge treasures in battle and use them to attack. Mu Qingdai revealed a troubled expression. Senior uncle, how are we to fight then? Hermit Qin Mu was stunned. He also suddenly realized the problem. With the little human emperor being so fierce, how were they supposed to fight against his dense magic power, his ever-changing body movements and footwork, his fast speed, his superb fist skills, his powerful divine arts, and even the incorporation of forging treasures into the battle? The 3 disciples of Little Jade Capital had no chance of victory. Defeat him in sword skills. Long Yu said solemnly. Hermit Qin Mu took a glance at the old human rod beside him, which was full of smiles. He was that close to bursting out in laughter. Barely holding his mirth back, village chief gave them a slight warning. As for sword skills, Mua has already reached the realm of skill. Hermit Qin Mu gritted his teeth. It was the first time his head ached so much. When Xu Xinghua came to Little Jade Capital, he had asked to see the techniques and divine arts, which was actually him trying to challenge Little Jade Capital, but Hermit Qin Mu hadn't felt this much of a headache that time. Qin Mu was clearly a human killing machine that scored full marks in all aspects. He could crush any challenger on the same realm in his peak state at any time. Furthermore, this fellow's confidence was also at a sick level. With condescension, he thought that he was the marvelous overlord body which no one could match. With great confidence in addition to the powerful abilities, the 3 disciples were indeed in an overwhelming situation. I wonder how is his endurance? The corners of Hermit Qin Mu's eyes twitched. If his endurance isn't good, we can drag the battle out to exhaust his energy. However, when he looked at Qin Mu's physique, it was obvious that the youth was a well-built cowherd boy. After beating Hermit Qin Mu up, he said that he'd only been stretching. He was still filled with an unbelievably vigorous energy. How's is his battle experience? Hermit Qin Mu thought until here and shook his head again. Qin Mu's battle experience could be said to be top-notch. His battle methods were wild and he could even incorporate the skill of forging treasures into his moves. He was clearly a battle maniac. Because of that, his fighting experience was obviously abundant. Little Jade Capital, in the meantime, stood aloof from worldly affairs, so the battle experience of his disciples would definitely be incomparable to that of Qin Mu. What about his ability to adapt on the spot? If he can't do that, he will fail even with a high cultivation. Wait a minute. For this brat to be so arrogant, not yet having been beaten to death, his ability to adapt on the spot should also be top-notch. Hermit Qin Mu looked at the old human rod beside him who had already walked out from the shadow of his beliefs crumbling. He had a pleased expression on his face as he prepared to see little Jade Capital make a joke of itself. Hermit Qin Mu gritted his teeth and said to Wang Muren and the rest, "Adapt to the situation." The three of them looked at one another and grumbled in their hearts, "Senior uncle said so much, but it's the same as if he'd said nothing. Instead, he put a lot of mental pressure on us. It would have been much better had he not said anything." Long Yu's gaze flickered, and he walked forward while saying, "Little human emperor, I want to challenge you with a sword." Hermit Qin Mu almost spat out a mouthful of black blood. Of all things Long Yu, this rascal decided to challenge him in sword skills. The old human rod beside him had already said that Qin Mu's sword skills had reached the realm of skill. Doing this meant that he was starting to create sword skills. His comprehension of the sword had already reached the realm of Grandmaster, or was on the borders of it. Of course, if his horizons were low, his starting point would be low as well, and the sword skills he founded would be poor and ordinary. However, the crucial thing was that the starting point of Qin Mu's sword skills was not low. Not only was it not low, little Jade Capital's sword skills could never match the teacher of his sword skills. Yet once Long Yu spoke, Hermit Qin Mu couldn't stop him anymore. Qin Mu revealed an astonished expression and said, "Senior brother Long Yu, I have learned about Dao Sec skills, so how is the sword skills of your little Jade Capital compared to those?" Long Yu smiled. 14 writings of Dao sword might not be able to match up to the sword skills of my little Jade Capital. Qin Mu left out a sigh of relief. Since he was not inferior to Dao sword, he wouldn't be killed by his sword in one move. My sword is pretty heavy, and I sometimes even like to use the sword pellet's weight to scheme against others. However, since we are competing in sword skills, I shan't use the weight of my sword pellet to scheme against senior brother Long Yu. Qin Mu kindly reminded him then, "Senior brother, be careful." Swoosh. Sword rain filled the sky as 8,000 swords rushed out from the Dao Tai sack and stabbed themselves into the ground. Please. Qin Mu smiled. This video will end here.